Imagine the world ends tomorrow. To survive, you're offered a ticket to a safe, high-tech bunker with one condition. Every aspect of your life within those walls is owned and managed by a single corporation. Would you take it? By the year 2098, this was the reality. Earth didn't die in a flash. It faded over decades. Oceans rose to reclaim the cities. Forests burned for years without stopping, and the very air became a poison that the lungs could no longer process. For the chosen few, the scientists and engineers, the only way forward was up. A 10-year-old boy named Arav watched his home receding out the window, a vibrant blue sphere slowly turning gray before vanishing into the black. This wasn't a relocation, it was a surrender. Humanity had stopped fighting to save its home and decided instead to settle for survival. Mars offered no horizons. Life was lived entirely beneath massive pressurized domes, separating a fragile population from a dead, frozen wasteland. Inside, every breath was a product of engineering. Gravity was simulative, and food was grown in sterile labs, and the sky was a projected screen that never knew the feeling of a breeze or the sound of rain. Because the environment was artificial, it could be commodified. This chart illustrates the closed-loop system of the colony. Water and oxygen pass through a centralized gate before reaching people. Every resident's consumption is monitored. If an account reaches zero, it constricts the flow of air. On Mars, leaving was physically impossible, and staying meant participating in a market where your own breath had a price tag. It wasn't a sanctuary, it was a captive society. Years later, Arav became a systems technician, spending his days maintaining the aging satellite relays that linked the domes. While scanning a dead frequency, he caught a signal. It was a broken, repeating loop coming from Earth. The message was simple: "We survived. Earth is healing. Come back." When Arav reported the discovery, there was no celebration. Instead, the colony directors immediately purged the satellite logs, revoked his terminal access, and threatened him with permanent resource restriction if he spoke of it again. The message from Earth wasn't news to the leadership. It was a liability they had been suppressing for decades. The colony's existence depended on the belief that there was nowhere else to go. The corporate motive for the lie was clear. If the citizens knew they could breathe for free on Earth, the Martian economy, built on the sale of basic survival, would collapse overnight. This illustrates the inevitable outcome. A system that charges for air cannot compete with a world where it is free and abundant. For the corporations, Earth's recovery was an existential threat to their monopoly. Arav was left with a choice. He could remain silent and keep his guaranteed rations, or he could risk his life to provide the colony with the one thing the corporation couldn't manufacture: a future. He used his knowledge of the relay system to bypass the dome's central firewalls. Across every screen in every colony, the same message began to echo: "We survived. Earth is healing. Come back." The broadcast did more than just provide information. It broke the psychological grip of the corporations, replacing a lifetime of managed fear with the possibility of choice. The truth sparked a slow-motion rebellion. Because the corporations relied on the technicians to keep the air flowing, they couldn't simply arrest them all. Under the cover of a general strike, engineers began refitting an old cargo hauler for a one-way trip to the stars. The journey was silent and uncertain, a months-long drift through the vacuum. Then, emerging from the shadows of the solar system, the target appeared. The signal had been right. The oceans were deep blue again, and vast swaths of green were reclaiming the continents. The planet hadn't just survived, it had thrived in humanity's absence. Landing on Earth wasn't just a return to a habitable zone, it was a final escape from a life where every heartbeat was a line item in a corporate ledger. Arav stepped onto the grass and took his first breath of real air. It wasn't the sterile, filtered oxygen of the domes. It was raw, unpredictable, and entirely his own. On Mars, life was a set of rules and limitations designed to keep a system running. On Earth, for the first time in his life, he didn't have to ask permission to exist.
Humanity had solved the engineering problem of how to survive the end of the world. Now they were finally addressing the more difficult problem of how to live in it. Now that you've seen both worlds, look at the choice Aroth made. If you were in his shoes, would you stay in the safety of Mars or choose the dangerous, uncertain freedom of Earth?